We like to believe that science has explained nearly everything our ancient world once held, but every so often discoveries emerge that don't fit our neat categories. Stone gears older than any known clock, temples carved before farming, underwater cities lost beneath rising seas, and texts written in languages no one can read. These are not fairy tales or fringe fantasies. They are real mysteries cataloged in dusty archives and quietly studied by experts who still have more questions than answers. Tonight, we'll drift through some of the strangest enigmas ever unearthed, artifacts and structures that defy our timelines and challenge the limits of what we thought possible. As you settle in, let your mind wander beneath the waves, across desert sands and into jungles long forgotten. Because once you glimpse these ancient puzzles, you'll realize how much of history's story remains unwritten and how many secrets are still waiting to be uncovered. Chapter 1. The Antikythera Mechanism, an ancient computer beyond its age. It begins on a moonlit night in the summer of 1901, when a small Greek sponge diving vessel drifted over the shadowed waters of the Aegean Sea, just off the coast of the island of Antikythera. Word had spread among the divers of a Roman shipwreck that lay somewhere in those currents, its hull littered with amphorae and bronze statues that promised profit for anyone daring enough to seek them. They were not professional archaeologists, just fishermen and adventurers in search of treasure. Yet what they would uncover that night would alter our understanding of ancient technology forever. With oxygen-laden sponges over their heads and weighted belts around their waists, the divers slipped silently beneath the surface. Their lamps pierced the darkness, revealing rusted anchors and shards of pottery half buried in silt. The first few descents yielded familiar finds: wine jars stamped with Greek letters, the gilded fragments of portrait busts, coins bearing the images of emperors long gone. But on their fifth dive, one man's hand brushed against something that did not look like any artifact they had seen before. It was a lump of corroded metal, roughly the size of a shoebox, its edges worn but still retaining a clear rectangular shape. Back on deck, they pried away layers of encrusted shell and marine growth to reveal the mechanism's wooden outer case, seamed and swollen from salt water, yet surprisingly intact. When they lifted the cover, what lay inside confounded them: a complex assembly of interlocking bronze gears, wheels, and dials, each tooth and cog cut with the precision of a master artisan. For decades, it would sit in fragments, largely ignored in a museum storeroom, its true nature lost to the rust and the sea. It wasn't until the mid-1950s that Derek de Sola Price, a physicist from Yale, took notice of reports describing a Greek clockwork device. He obtained access to the corroded pieces and embarked on a painstaking study. Using early X-ray techniques, he peered inside the encrusted mass and discovered at least 30 bronze gears, each cut with fine teeth and ratios that corresponded precisely to astronomical cycles. It quickly became clear that this was no ordinary artifact. It was a mechanical calculator, an analog computer designed to model the movements of celestial bodies. Radiocarbon dating of the remaining wooden fragments and stylistic analysis of the Greek inscriptions placed its manufacture around 150 BCE. At that time, Hellenistic science was flourishing. Scholars in Alexandria were mapping the stars, philosophers debated the nature of the universe, and mathematicians like Hipparchus were calculating the length of the year to within a fraction of a second. Yet nobody had ever suspected they possessed the mechanical skill to build a gear train capable of reproducing those calculations in physical form. Imagine the work involved. A craftsman would begin with a solid bronze disc, carefully measure and mark the position of each tooth, then use a bow drill and fine chisels to cut gear teeth with tolerances within a few hundredths of a millimeter. Each gear ratio, 223 teeth to 235 for example, reflected the synodic cycle of the moon in relation to the sun, predicting eclipses in a cycle known as the Saros, a period of about 18 years. Another set of gears tracked the metonic cycle, a 19-year period after which the phases of the moon repeat on the same calendar dates. Yet another dial, on the mechanism's front face, displayed the 12 signs of the zodiac and the days of the Egyptian calendar. Beneath it, a secondary dial traced the 4-year cycle of the Olympiad. Consider the mathematical understanding required to design such gearing. The designers needed to know the length of the solar year, the lunar month, the timing of eclipses, and the periodicities of the planets, data gathered through centuries of naked-eye astronomy. They transformed those abstract cycles into precise gear ratios, then translated them into the physical realm with extraordinary craftsmanship. No written treatise from antiquity details that process. No workshop manuals survive. The mechanism stands alone, a solitary testament to a vanished technological tradition. When Price published his findings in 1974, reverberations spread through academia. Here was conclusive proof that ancient engineers had not only theorized about the heavens, but had built machines to follow them. But the mechanism also posed a profound mystery. Nowhere else in the archaeological record did a device of comparable complexity appear. No references in surviving manuscripts, no mentions in the works of Archimedes, Ctesibius, or Vitruvius. The gear-cutting techniques vanished with the Roman Empire's collapse, not resurfacing until the elaborate astronomical clocks of medieval European cathedrals 12 centuries later. Over the next 2 decades, teams from Cardiff University and Greek authorities employed advanced CT scanning and 3-dimensional reconstruction to digitally reassemble the device. In 2006, a complete virtual model revealed hidden inscriptions, operating instructions, corrections for leap years, and even the names of some of the original designers. It also confirmed the existence of a 9th gear train, one possibly intended to track the orbit of Venus, though its fragmentary remains make certainty difficult. Each new detail deepened the quandary: how many other such machines once existed? Were they common in scholarly circles, or was this a one-off marvel commissioned by a wealthy patron? Some have suggested the mechanism was built in Rhodes, where Posidonius taught astronomy, or in Athens under the patronage of King Mithridates of Pontus, whose court prized intellectual innovation. Others propose Alexandria, the cosmopolitan hub of the library and the museum, as the most likely birthplace. But in the absence of direct evidence, these remain educated guesses. What is beyond dispute is the mechanism's sophistication, a device that not only predicts eclipses years in advance, but models the irregularities of the moon's motion, its elliptical orbit, nodal precession, and anomalistic cycle, all without a single electronic component. This marvel challenges our assumptions about the linear progression of technology. We imagine ancient mechanisms as simple, water clocks, wind-driven automata, catapults, but never as precision computers. Yet here, in a battered lump of bronze and wood, is a machine intimately akin to the differential gearing found in modern speedometers and mechanical calculators. It begs the question: what was lost? What workshops once turned out these devices? What libraries held diagrams of gear trains? And why did the tradition disappear so completely? One theory holds that these machines were rare pedagogical tools, used by a select few scholars to teach advanced astronomy. Another posits that they were prestige objects, commissioned by rulers to display both wealth and mastery of cosmic order. A more radical suggestion is that they belonged to a broader Hellenistic tradition of mechanical ingenuity, machines for telling time, measuring tides, or even controlling automata in temples that simply left few surviving traces. After all, bronze was valuable, often melted down to mint coins or recast into new works. Wooden casings decayed, and gears could be lost or repurposed. The Antikythera Mechanism also reminds us how fragile our record of the past is. It lay unseen on the ocean floor for nearly 2 millennia, its purpose obscured until chance divers fished it from the depths. How many other wonders remain entombed in shipwrecks, buried ruins, or forgotten caves waiting for discovery? And how many more did we unknowingly dismantle, melt, or ignore? As the night deepens, let yourself drift with the image of those sponge divers, their lamps swaying in the blue-black water, brushing aside shards of glass and bronze to reveal a marvel beyond imagination. Think of the Hellenistic craftsmen marking out the placement of each gear, measuring with a divider's precision, carving in wood and bronze a model of the heavens. Picture the device turning silently on a lectern, teaching students to track the sun, the moon, and the distant wanderers of our solar system. And in that silence, beneath the waves across the centuries, listen for the whir of those ancient gears. Because in that sound lies a reminder that history is never as settled as it seems. There are always discoveries waiting to reshape our understanding, machines waiting to be rediscovered, and traditions waiting to be remembered. Chapter 2. Göbekli Tepe. Temples built 6,000 years before Stonehenge, beneath a star-pocked Anatolian sky, long before the first seeds were sown in neat rows, and centuries before the wheel turned on its axle, a group of hunters and gatherers came together atop a limestone plateau near the modern city of Şanlıurfa in southeastern Turkey. They were not farmers, nor did they live in permanent villages. Yet around 9,600 BCE, they began to carve enormous stone pillars into the rocky ground, arranging them into circles and rectangles that would baffle every succeeding generation. The site, today known as Göbekli Tepe, remained buried and forgotten for thousands of years, its purpose shrouded beneath layers of earth and rubble until its rediscovery in the mid-20th century. At first glance, excavators expected a simple Neolithic campsite. Instead, they unveiled a series of megalithic enclosures, rings of tis-shaped limestone pillars, some weighing up to 20 tons apiece, each carved with reliefs of foxes, vultures, snakes, scorpions, and abstract symbols so deeply etched that they cast long shadows in the afternoon sun. Imagine the scene at Göbekli Tepe, 6,000 years before Stonehenge, men and women wielding flint axes and chisels against rock as hard as steel, their labor carried out not in service of planting barley or tending goats, but in devotion to something beyond daily survival. There are no nearby fields of grain, no evidence of large storage pits for harvested crops. Instead, archaeologists have found only a few scattered hearths and animal bones, omnivores feasting on deer, boar, and gazelle. These people were still roaming the countryside, yet they devoted enormous resources to carve and raise pillars, then deliberately bury their own work beneath layers of dirt, sealing the site as though preserving a secret. The sheer scale of the architecture is humbling. The largest enclosure, dubbed Building D, measures nearly 20 meters across. Its 12 pillars stand in a perfect circle, each carved from single blocks of local limestone. The effort to quarry, shape, transport, and erect these stones would have required hundreds of people, and yet no evidence exists of adjoining villages, no signs of industrial quarries, no traces of permanent dwellings. Instead, Göbekli Tepe appears as an island of monumental stone rising above a mobile hunter-gatherer society. Consider the carvings themselves. One pillar depicts two snakes entwined around a central staff, another shows a stylized fox mid-prowl, its ears erect and tail flicking. There are vultures in flight, scorpions poised to sting, and abstract H, or boomerang shapes whose meaning remains elusive. The reliefs are not passive decorations, they command attention, implying ritual significance, symbols of death, rebirth, celestial cycles, or mythic beasts that once stalked the minds of those who gathered here. And gathered they did, likely from hundreds of kilometers around, bringing offerings of animals, stone tools, and perhaps even ritual feasting. Why build such a complex at a time when human societies had not yet settled to farm? Agriculture would emerge in the Fertile Crescent only centuries later, yet here was proof that communal construction of megaliths predated organized planting and urban life. Some scholars argue that Göbekli Tepe itself served as the crucible in which farming was born, that the shared labor and feasting drew disparate bands together, encouraging experimentation with cultivation to feed more workers at larger gatherings. Perhaps early domestication of wheat and rye was not driven by survival alone, but by the need to sustain elaborate rituals atop this sacred hill. As the site grew, Successive generations added new enclosures, each one meticulously buried under layers of stone and soil once it was complete. Why bury your temple? Some believe it was a ritual act of closure, a deliberate interment designed to mark the end of a ceremonial phase before moving on to a new circle. Others suggest collective memory was encoded in the earth itself, preserving each enclosure for those initiated into arcane rites. Whatever the reason, the repeated burial created a monumental mound. Göbekli Tepe's very name means belly hill, that concealed the stone circles until modern archaeologists troweled through the topsoil and revealed a temple complex half as old as civilization itself. Excavations have also uncovered fragments of carved pillars too small or fragile to stand, implying workshops of skilled stonecutters at work behind the scenes. A few limestone benches and steps suggest places where initiates sat or knelt during ceremonies. And while no written records survive, fragments of chipped limestone tablets bearing abstract signs hint at proto-writing or symbolic communication. Early attempts to record mythic stories or ritual instructions in pictorial form. Each new season of digging expands the map of Göbekli Tepe, revealing yet more enclosures, terraces, and carved stones. In 2018, archaeologists announced they had found a previously unknown room beneath the original circles, its pillars still standing, their carvings untouched since they were sealed 10,000 years ago. The site continues to rewrite textbooks. What was once considered the dawn of farming is now seen as only one chapter in a deeper story of communal belief, monumental architecture, and ritual tradition. As you let these images drift through your mind, the moonlit quarrying of pillars, the silent carving of foxes and scorpions, the thrumming drums of gatherings long past, consider how this discovery challenges our neat narratives of progress. We like to chart linear steps. Nomads become farmers, farmers become city dwellers become empire builders. But Göbekli Tepe suggests a different order, that spirituality and ritual may have come first, and only afterward did the seeds of agriculture sprout to feed ever larger congregations on this sacred hill. Tonight, as you breathe slowly, let that thought settle in. Civilization may have begun, not with the plow, but with the hammer and chisel at Göbekli Tepe. Long before the first grain was planted, temples of stone rose from the bedrock, testifying to ancient mysteries we are only now beginning to understand. Chapter 3. Puma Punku's laser-sharp stones that defy explanation. High on the windswept altiplano of Bolivia, just above the shimmering waters of Lake Titicaca, lie the ruins of Puma Punku, a name that translates as the door of the puma. To the casual traveler, it appears as a jumbled pile of sandstone and andesite blocks, toppled and worn by centuries of sun, wind, and rain. But look more closely, and you realize that these stones are not simply weathered rubble. They are the finest examples of megalithic precision ever uncovered in the Americas, blocks so perfectly cut, so flawlessly polished, that even the most advanced modern machinery would struggle to reproduce them. The site dates to around 536 E, built by the Tiwanaku culture, a society that flourished on these high plains more than 1,000 years before the Inca rose to power. According to local legend, Puma Punku was part of a great temple complex, an axis mundi, where earth, sky, and water converged in ritual harmony. Surrounding squares and sunken courts, ramps and platforms, all led to a grand entrance marked by enormous stone lintels and door jambs. But between 1000 and 1100 C, something happened, possibly a devastating earthquake, perhaps social collapse, and the site was abandoned, its blocks left where they fell. When archaeologists began systematic excavations in the 20th century, they discovered that the stones were not random fragments. Each block fit a precise role in a larger architectural plan. Some were massive H-shaped blocks weighing more than 100 tons. Others were rectangular slabs up to 4 meters long and 2 meters wide, with holes bored through them at exact right angles, chamfered edges, and surfaces polished to a mirror-like sheen. Straight lines ran across the stones with uniform depth and width, never wavering by more than a millimeter over distances of meters. Even the corners, carved at precise 90-degree angles, show no sign of the irregularities we would expect from hammer and chisel work alone. Geological surveys have confirmed that the bulk of these stones, especially the andesite monoliths, originated from quarries located at least 10 kilometers away. Transporting such weights across rugged terrain would have been a titanic endeavor in any era, let alone in a society that left no evidence of draft animals, wheeled vehicles, or large-scale rope and timber hauling systems. And still more puzzling is the way the stones were shaped before transport. Many blocks bear marginal grooves and channels cut into their undersides, features that imply they were shaped flat, lifted and slid into position, rather than trimmed in situ. Once the blocks arrived at Punku, final adjustments were made to interlock them in a puzzle-like fashion. Engineers created T-shaped flanges and sockets so that no mortar was required. Gravity and friction held the stones in place. Horizontal seams are so tight that even a thin blade cannot be inserted between them. Some stones bear series of closely spaced drill holes, nearly identical in diameter, arranged in straight lines, suggesting the use of some form of tubular drilling tool, perhaps laced with sand or harder abrasives. But no surviving tool fragments have ever been recovered. Mainstream archaeology attributes this precision to an exceptionally skilled workforce, using bronze or copper saws, wooden wedges and water, and vast numbers of laborers. In their view, a combination of patient chiseling, abrasive sand, and the repeated insertion of wooden wedges, swollen with water to crack the stone, could over months or years yield surprisingly accurate results. The argument holds that with enough time and repetition, any cut can be refined to straightness. But then one must ask, why do we see such uniform perfection across dozens of stones in different quarries and with no sign of the hundreds of saw blades that would have been destroyed in the process? Even today, replicating a single Punku block of similar size and hardness would cost millions of dollars in equipment and man-hours. Diamond-tipped wire saws, hydraulic presses, laser scanning alignment, modern methods rely on technologies that did not exist even a century ago. Yet these ancient builders achieved mirror-flat surfaces, perfect right angles, and precise drill holes with tools that have never been found. Alternative theories have surfaced over the years. Some researchers suggest that the Tiwanaku inherited techniques from an earlier lost culture, one that mastered advanced stone working and was later forgotten. Radiocarbon samples from beneath the site hint at sporadic human activity as far back as 200 BCE, centuries before Punku's heyday, leaving open the possibility of an ancestral tradition of megalithic construction. More speculative voices invoke experimental physics or acoustic resonance. Could low-frequency sound waves or controlled vibrations have fractured the stone along natural cleavage planes, enabling long, straight cuts? Laboratory attempts to recreate stone, cutting with ultrasound and sand slurry, show promise on a small scale, but scaling such methods up to monolith-sized blocks without electrical power or complex transducers seems equally improbable. Then there is the fringe theory of ancient astronauts, which posits that Punku's builders had assistance from extraterrestrial visitors possessing anti-gravity or laser technologies. Proponents point to the site's precise geometry, astronomical alignments, and the absence of any demonstrable prehistoric quarrying infrastructure as evidence. However, no credible physical traces, no metallic residues or anomalous isotopes have ever been documented to support this theory, and most scholars dismiss it as untestable speculation. Perhaps the greatest mystery lies not in any single block, but in the grand design itself. Punku's layout echoes celestial patterns, aligning with the cardinal directions and marking solar solstices. Certain stones frame the rising sun on the June solstice elsewhere. Shadows cast by the pillars trace arcs that correlate with Andean constellations. The site may have functioned as both temple and observatory, a place where the heavens and the earth met, and where time itself was measured in stone. As dusk falls over the plateau, imagine the original builders standing atop these platforms, watching the sun set behind the Cordillera Real, listening to the wind whistling through the stone doorways, and feeling beneath their feet the silent stability of blocks hewn and placed with cosmic care. They might have channeled mythic energies, invoked ancestral spirits, or simply marveled at the union of human will and natural stone. Today, scholars continue to puzzle over how the Tiwanaku shone such a bright light of engineering in an otherwise dark age of megalithic collapse. Excavations resumed in the 1990s under British and Bolivian teams, revealing new stone fragments and passages buried by centuries of silt. Yet for every answer uncovered, the identification of original quarry sites, the mapping of tool marks, dozens more questions emerge about technique, purpose, and legacy. As you let your thoughts drift over the windswept stones of Punku, consider the paradox, a society capable of bending massive granite to its will, yet leaving behind no written manual, no technological lineage, no garbled myths about how it was done. Their artistry stands above us, intact and unannotated, inviting each generation to peer at the cuts, trace the angles, and wonder at the invisible hands that shape them. And so this chapter closes not with a solution, but with an enduring sense of awe. For in the chiseled perfection of Punku, we confront the limits of our assumptions about history, craftsmanship, and the full measure of human potential, lessons carved in stone, waiting patiently for us to catch up. Chapter 4. Nan Madol, the Atlantis of Micronesia. On a tranquil night in the western Pacific, the gentle lap of waves against volcanic reefs is the only sound. Above, stars wheel slowly across a velvet sky. Beneath the water's surface, half-submerged stone walls trace ghostly corridors through a shallow lagoon. This is Nan Madol, the so-called Venice of the Pacific, a ruined city built not on land, but on a reef of basalt and coral, its causeways and towers rising like a maze of dark monolithic glyphs against the moonlit water. Nan Madol sits off the eastern shore of Pohnpei, one of the largest islands in the Federated States of Micronesia. Native legend tells of twin sorcerers, Olisipa and Olosopa, who arrived from the western horizon, riding a stone canoe and chanting magical spells to transport megalithic blocks across the reef. Over generations, these two brothers, part priest, part king, established a dynasty that ruled from a city of 90 artificial islets, built to house palaces, temples, and the tombs of high chieftains. Archaeologists first documented Nan Madol in the early 20th century, but the true scale of the site remained obscured by dense jungle and shifting lagoons. In the 1980s, aerial photography and sonar mapping revealed more than 90 islets linked by narrow waterways. The walls of these islets are composed of prismatic basalt logs, hundreds of thousands of them, each weighing up to 5 tons. The basalt columns, quarried from a volcanic plateau several kilometers away, were carefully cut into vertical prisms and interlocked in dry masonry, without mortar. Coral boulders, packed behind the basalt walls, provided ballast and stabilized the structures against tidal currents. Imagine for a moment the planning and labor required. A workforce of thousands would have had to extract basalt from inland quarries, shape each column with stone and shell tools, and then haul them by raft, canoe, or perhaps rolling along log sledges across open ocean to the reef. There they would arrange the stones in perfectly straight walls, align them to cardinal points, and intersperse coral fill to ensure buoyant stability. All of this accomplished without wheeled vehicles, draft animals, or metal chisels. The precision of the block cutting rivals that of Inca masonry in South America, yet occurs without the benefit of iron tools or civil engineering texts. Today, many of the islets lie in ruin, collapsed walls, overgrown temples, and tree roots cracking through basalt seams. But for centuries, Nan Madol served as the ceremonial and political center of Pohnpei chiefdoms. Its largest islet, Nandao Kor, housed the mortuary temples of the Saldlers, the dynasty that ruled until about 1600 CE. The Saldlurs imposed a rigid caste system, demanding tribute and slaves from commoners and neighboring islands, all administered through the labyrinthine canals and causeways of this water-bound capital. What makes Nan Madol especially puzzling is not only its scale but its abrupt abandonment. By the late 16th century, Saldlur rule collapsed, possibly under the weight of internecine warfare, drought, or a rising circle of decentralized chiefs who rejected the island's onerous tribute system. Oral histories recount that the last Saldlur king was exiled, and the islets were abandoned, left to the tides, the wind, and the encroaching jungle. When Western explorers first encountered the site, they described a city frozen in time. Palm trees sprouted among coral-filled courtyards, moss-covered palace thresholds, and the canals teemed with fish. European visitors in the 19th century reported stone walls reaching 3 meters in height, piled so densely that only narrow channels of water divided them. Yet little was recorded in writing. In fact, the remains of Nan Madol were largely ignored beyond brief notes in navigation logs. It was not until the mid-20th century that systematic archaeological work began. Radiocarbon dating of charcoal in Court Fill placed initial construction around 1200 CE, with expansion peaking in the 14th century. This timeline coincides with other Pacific megalithic traditions, such as the monumental stone platforms of Tonga and Fiji, hinting at a period of intense cultural exchange and maritime prowess across Micronesia and beyond. Still, scholars struggle to explain the logistics. Transporting molten basalt logs over open sea is no small feat, even with the most advanced outrigger canoes. Some researchers propose that massive coral reed rafts, lashed together and buoyed by inflated calabash gourds, may have carried the stones in stages, short voyages from reef to reef, stockpiling stones until enough assembled for the next leg. Others suggest a lost knowledge of tidal patterns and ocean currents, allowing the builders to harness the sea itself as a conveyor belt, guiding laden rafts with skill honed over generations. Then there is the city's orientation. Nan Madol's layout aligns with sunrise on the winter solstice, while certain temple entrances frame the full moon on the spring equinox. Channels widen and narrow to channel tidal flows, perhaps generating musical hums as water rushed through underwater openings, serving ritual or acoustic purposes. Each islet may have held a specific function: royal residence, mortuary temple, ceremonial platform, or elite housing, creating a living map of power relations carved in stone and water. Modern analysis using satellite imagery and GIS mapping has revealed patterns invisible at ground level, radial alignments pointing to other sacred sites on Pohnpei, networks of subsurface canals guiding freshwater flow, and potential astronomical sightlines between distant islets. Yet on the ground, thick jungle and silting lagoons conceal as much as they reveal. Explorers navigating the narrow waterways often find walls submerged breast deep, their tops offering only a glimpse of a hidden corridor that extends far beneath silent water. Nan Madol also challenges our understanding of cultural memory. Oral traditions passed down by Pohnpeian elders speak of the Saldlurs as tyrants whose fall was a liberation. They describe the city's gates as portals to realms of ancestral spirits and warn that trespassers might invoke curses if they disturbed sacred stones. These legends preserved fragments of memory long after the islets were deserted, yet they provide no technical explanations for how the city was built, only mythic residue of its spiritual power. In recent years, climate change and rising sea levels have accelerated erosion and inundation at Nan Madol. Conservationists race to document the site before coral boulders collapse and walls slump beneath higher tides. Submerged causeways increasingly vanish under turbid water, and saltwater intrusion threatens organic remains that could yield DNA or botanical clues about the diets and trade networks of those who ruled this city of stone and sea. As you imagine the moonlit causeways and silent temples, consider how Nan Madol forces us to rethink the relationship between environment and civilization. Here a culture of hunter-gatherers and fishermen built a monumental capital on unstable reefs, then sealed its own legacy beneath coral and silt. The city's creators vanished, yet their basalt logs stand as testament to a lost age of maritime mastery and stone-cutting finesse, no less remarkable than that of the Egyptians or Incas. And so this chapter closes with the gentle lapping of lagoon waters against basalt pillars, reminders that the boundary between land and sea, past and present, remains porous. Nan Madol beckons us to listen to the echoes of a vanished empire, to trace the subtle currents of innovation that once carried those stones across islands, and to wonder what other cities lie submerged or buried, waiting to be rediscovered as we follow history's shifting tides. Chapter 5. The Dropa Discs, Skipping Stones from the Sky. High in the rugged terrain of the Baigong Mountains on the border between China and Tibet, where oxygen thins and clouds cling low to ancient peaks, a strange and controversial discovery was reportedly made in the 1930s, one that would ripple across decades, inciting wonder, ridicule, and deep mystery. It is a tale involving small humanoid skeletons, stone discs inscribed with microscopic hieroglyphs, and an alleged ancient extraterrestrial crash. Welcome to the enigma of the Dropa Discs. According to a highly disputed account, in 1938, Chinese archaeologist Dr. Chi Te led an expedition into the Bayan Karaula caves. What he and his team allegedly uncovered was no ordinary burial site. Deep within the cave chambers, they reportedly found rows of tiny tombs containing skeletons no taller than 4 feet. The skulls were unusually large, almost disproportionate to the bodies, with delicate frames that suggested extreme age or even another species entirely. But the most astounding find wasn't the skeletons, it was what was discovered buried with them. Hundreds of round stone discs, roughly 9 inches in diameter, each with a perfectly round hole in the center. At first glance, they resembled ancient records or phonograph discs. Their surfaces were etched with spiral grooves so faint they were nearly invisible to the naked eye. Upon closer inspection, it was claimed that these grooves were not random. They were a continuous spiral of tiny carved symbols, inscriptions so minuscule that they could only be read using magnification. These stone artifacts, later dubbed the Dropa Discs, were said to have encoded messages, records of a tribe known as the Dropa, who claimed to have come from a distant star system and crash-landed on Earth thousands of years ago. Let that settle in for a second. A series of stone discs, allegedly found in a cave, describing an alien race stranded on Earth after a failed expedition, long before the first written records of Chinese civilization even began. These claims remained obscure until the 1960s, when Russian scientist S. Vyatkin and his colleague Professor Tum Nui allegedly analyzed some of the discs and published an article in the Soviet magazine Sputnik. The article claimed that the discs contained information about the Dropa people and their extraterrestrial origins, suggesting they had crash-landed in the region 12,000 years ago, struggled to survive, and eventually interbred with local tribes. It was the perfect storm: Cold War-era science, UFO lore, mysterious ancient artifacts, and a lack of clear documentation, all wrapped in a tantalizing mystery that spanned both geography and belief. But the story didn't end there. By the late 1970s, rumors circulated that several of the Dropa discs had been sent to museums in Beijing for study, only to mysteriously vanish from public view. Some claimed they were destroyed, others said they were locked away in government vaults to prevent public panic. No official records were ever released to confirm the discs' existence. Critics, of course, called the entire story a hoax. They pointed out that there was no reliable evidence of Dr. Chi Te's expedition, and no academic journal ever published a peer-reviewed article about the discs. Tum Mui, the supposed translator, couldn't be traced in university records. Even the original Sputnik article was elusive, cited only in fringe UFO publications, yet the Dropa discs refused to fade from public consciousness. Photos began surfacing, grainy black and white images of flat stone discs with grooves and holes. Some even showed scientists examining them. Were these photos real? Were they staged? No one could say for sure. The line between historical fact and myth had blurred beyond recognition. Supporters of the Dropa theory point to the unique oral traditions of the isolated Tibetan tribes in the area, who speak of sky people who came from the stars and taught them strange ways. They also reference a surprising linguistic anomaly. Certain dialects in the region contain phonetic patterns not found in any neighboring languages, suggesting an external influence lost to time. Then there's the matter of the skeletons. Though the bones allegedly found in the caves have disappeared, descriptions from early accounts detail unusual cranial sizes, high eye sockets, and fragile bones. Could they have been a genetic offshoot, a result of ancient disease, or were they something else entirely, beings not born of this earth? Modern researchers have tried to recreate the story from fragments. Chinese records during the Cultural Revolution were destroyed in vast numbers, and local knowledge was suppressed. What's left is a ghost story told through rumor and translation, preserved in obscure books, second-hand testimonies, and a few mysterious photographs. But whether the Dropa discs were real alien relics, misunderstood cultural artifacts, or an elaborate hoax, the very idea invites deeper questions. Why do so many cultures separated by oceans, continents, and millennia all share stories of sky gods, star visitors, and cosmic teachers? Could the Dropa legend be one more link in a chain of ancient encounters with something otherworldly? In a world where ancient megaliths align with celestial bodies, where lost cities lie buried beneath jungle and ice, the Dropa discs, true or not, echo humanity's oldest curiosity. What if we are not alone and never have been? Chapter 6. The Baghdad Battery. Ancient electricity or modern misunderstanding. Imagine stumbling upon an ancient clay pot buried beneath the sands of Iraq that at first glance looks like nothing more than a container for storing grain, wine, or oil. But when examined more closely, this humble jar hides a mystery that has baffled scientists for decades. Because inside this 2,000-year-old vessel lies the potential evidence of something far more advanced: electricity. This is the story of the Baghdad Battery, a strange artifact that has sparked fiery debates among historians, archaeologists, and alternative theorists alike. Was this truly a power source created by ancient hands, or are we seeing a modern invention in the shadow of an ancient relic? It all began in the 1930s, when workers excavating a site near Khujad Rabu, a village just outside Baghdad, unearthed a small, unassuming clay jar. Standing about 5 to 6 inches tall, it didn't look particularly impressive. But inside the jar was something unexpected: a copper cylinder rolled and sealed at one end with bitumen, a tar-like substance. Through the center of this copper tube ran an iron rod, also sealed with bitumen. It didn't scream high technology, but it certainly didn't match the profile of a simple storage jar either. Wilhelm Koenig, the German director of the Baghdad Museum at the time, took one look at this unusual setup and made a bold proposal. In 1938, he suggested that this ancient vessel, when filled with an acidic liquid like vinegar or lemon juice, could generate a weak electric charge. A 2,000-year-old battery. Modern scientists have since recreated this device, using the same materials and principles. The result? It actually works. When filled with a weak acid, the copper and iron setup can generate between 0.5 to 1 volt of electricity, not enough to power a city or even a light bulb, but enough to do something. Enough, perhaps, to plate gold onto silver. This process is called electroplating, and it's one of the major theories surrounding the battery's use. If true, it would mean ancient people had not only discovered electricity, but also harnessed it for artistic or ceremonial purposes. Others speculate it may have been used for religious rituals, where a small electric shock could be delivered during ceremonies, adding a divine or mystical sensation to a spiritual experience. Still more radical ideas suggest early experiments in pain relief, or even electrotherapy, were being conducted, just as ancient Egyptians were known to use electric fish from the Nile to relieve pain. But not everyone agrees. Many mainstream archaeologists argue that the Baghdad Battery may have been nothing more than a simple storage vessel for scrolls or papyrus, and that the copper and iron components served symbolic or functional purposes unrelated to electricity. They point out that no wires, terminals, or conductors have ever been found connected to these jars, nothing to channel the charge toward a specific application. Even if the battery could produce electricity, what was it connected to? Still, the questions remain. If this really was a functioning battery, who created it? And how? The jar is believed to date back to the Parthian period, around 250 BCE to 224 CE, a time of great cultural blending and technical creativity in Mesopotamia, but hardly an age we associate with electrical science. If this ancient civilization stumbled upon electricity, how did the knowledge disappear? Why didn't it spread or evolve into more advanced systems? Unless, of course, the knowledge was hidden, guarded by priests, lost in war, or even passed down through secret societies whose knowledge was never meant for public eyes. And then there's the more outlandish but fascinating possibility. What if this technology was not discovered by accident or experiment, but rather inherited, taught by beings from a more advanced civilization, or even visitors from beyond our world? It's a theory that may sound far-fetched, but not so different from the legends told by many ancient cultures. Myths of gods who descended from the skies, bearing tools of fire and light. Stories of divine beings who possessed powers humans could barely comprehend. The Baghdad Battery is not an isolated anomaly. Around the world, we find strange echoes of ancient technology, depictions of what look like electric light bulbs on the walls of Egypt's Dendera temple, legends of flying machines called vimanas in Indian epics, and precision-cut stones in South America that seem impossible, even by today's engineering standards. Maybe we're only scratching the surface of a much deeper truth, one that suggests human history is far older, stranger, and more advanced than we've ever been taught. The Baghdad Battery might just be a small piece of that forgotten puzzle, a whisper of lost power from a time when science and spirit, myth and machine, may have coexisted. And that's the real power of this mysterious artifact. Not the half-volt of electricity it might generate, but the flood of questions it ignites in our minds. Who were we? What did we know? And what else have we lost to time? Whatever the answer, one thing is clear. We're not just uncovering history, we're uncovering mystery. Chapter 7. Messages to the Sky. The unsolved enigma of the Nazca Lines. High above the jagged mountains of Peru, etched into the desert plateau of Nazca, lies one of the most mysterious and awe-inspiring wonders of the ancient world. Stretching across miles of arid terrain are massive, perfectly straight lines, geometric patterns, and enormous depictions of animals and strange figures, some of which can only be fully seen from the sky. These are the Nazca Lines. From the ground, they're barely noticeable, just shallow grooves scraped into the earth, created by removing the top layer of dark, oxidized stone to reveal the lighter soil beneath. But from high above, a very different picture emerges. Hummingbirds the size of football fields, monkeys spiraling in perfect curls, spiders, lizards, and other creatures, all drawn with precision and scale that defy simple explanation. First rediscovered by Western archaeologists in the 1920s, the lines have been puzzling experts ever since. The Nazca people are believed to have created these geoglyphs between 500 BCE and 500 CE. But how did they manage to design such massive artworks without any aerial perspective? Without drones, planes, or even high vantage points? That's one of the central questions that keeps this ancient mystery alive. Some researchers argue that the Nazca people could have used basic surveying tools, stakes and ropes to construct the figures, There's evidence suggesting that grids and careful measurement were used. But even with that explanation, the accuracy, symmetry, and sheer size of the drawings are astounding. We're talking about lines that run arrow straight for several miles, across uneven terrain, through hills and valleys, maintaining their direction perfectly. That level of precision seems to demand not just skill, but an understanding of geometry and planning far beyond what we typically credit to pre-Columbian civilizations. And then there's the big question: why? What purpose did these massive designs serve? One theory suggests they were part of a complex system of ceremonial or astronomical calendars, ritual pathways walked during religious ceremonies dedicated to deities of water and fertility. The desert region where the Nazca lived is one of the driest places on Earth, so some believe the lines were offerings to the gods, asking for rain or favorable conditions. Others see an astronomical significance. Some of the lines appear to align with solstices, equinoxes, and star positions. Could the Nazca have been sky watchers, tracking celestial bodies, mapping cosmic cycles, perhaps even attempting to synchronize their agriculture with movements of the heavens? And then there's the theory that pushes all boundaries, that the Nazca lines were designed to be seen not by humans, but by beings in the sky, extraterrestrials. Ancient astronaut theorists point out that many of the animal figures resemble constellations, and some shapes, particularly long flat runways, look like modern airstrips. They argue that such monumental artwork could only be appreciated from the air, implying that the Nazca were either trying to communicate with sky beings or were receiving knowledge from them. Of course, mainstream archaeology dismisses this idea as pseudoscience. But the mystery remains. There are hundreds of these geoglyphs, many still undiscovered, and despite decades of study, we still don't truly know how or why they were created. Then in 2018, something even stranger was found. Using drones and satellite imaging, researchers uncovered new geoglyphs that had gone unnoticed for centuries. Some of these new shapes appear older and more eroded than the famous ones, and a few are unlike anything seen before, featuring abstract humanoid figures with large eyes and elongated limbs. These findings have reignited interest in the Nazca culture, opening new debates about their origin and purpose. Could it be that the Nazca inherited this tradition from an even earlier civilization, one that passed down the knowledge of how to create massive earthworks visible only from the sky? Some fringe researchers even suggest that the Nazca were part of a global pattern pointing to similar geoglyphs found in other parts of the world, from the Uffington White Horse in England to the Sajama Lines in Bolivia, which span even larger distances. There's something undeniably strange going on here. A consistent pattern of ancient people carving out gigantic designs that can't be appreciated from the ground. It's as if someone or something was watching from above. Maybe the Nazca lines were a form of communication, a message written on the earth itself for sky gods, ancestors, or travelers passing by in the heavens. Maybe they were spiritual runways, guiding souls to the stars. Or maybe, just maybe, they are the last remnants of a knowledge we've long forgotten, knowledge that once allowed humans to see the world from a much higher place. Whatever their purpose, the Nazca lines stand as a timeless enigma, silent, vast, and still utterly unexplained. Chapter 8. The Great Flood Myths. Echoes of a lost civilization. Across nearly every ancient culture, from every corner of the world, there exists a common story, one so consistent and widespread that it continues to baffle historians, archaeologists, and mythologists alike. The tale of a great flood, a cataclysmic deluge that wiped out civilization, reshaped the earth, and left only a handful of survivors to rebuild what was lost. But what if these aren't just myths? What if they're distorted memories of something real? We all know the story of Noah's Ark, one of the most famous flood legends, passed down through the Abrahamic religions. A divine warning, a giant ark, animals gathered 2 by 2, and a rain that lasted for 40 days and 40 nights. But what's often overlooked is how eerily similar this story is to ancient flood myths from Mesopotamia, India, China, the Americas, and even Australia. In the ancient Sumerian text, the Epic of Gilgamesh, which predates the Bible by over 1,000 years, we find the story of Utnapishtim, who, like Noah, is warned by a god to build a boat to survive a coming flood. He gathers animals, sets sail, and survives a flood that destroys all of humanity. The parallels are undeniable. In India's ancient Satapatha Brahmana, we hear of Manu, a wise man warned by a talking fish about an impending deluge. He builds a boat, ties it to the horn of the fish, and is guided to safety as the world drowns beneath the waves. The same theme repeats in China, with the legend of Yu the Great, in Mesoamerica, with the Aztec story of Tata and Nani, and even among Aboriginal tribes in Australia, who speak of floodwaters swallowing the land and reshaping it forever. How could so many unrelated cultures, separated by oceans and millennia, all arrive at the same core narrative? Skeptics argue these are simply metaphors, mythical warnings about divine judgment, moral decay, or the destructive power of nature. But others believe these myths are more than just symbolic, that they could be recollections, fragmented oral histories of a real global catastrophe. And here's where things get interesting. At the end of the last ice age, around 11,000 years ago, Earth underwent a period of rapid and violent climate change. Glaciers melted, sea levels rose by hundreds of feet. Massive floods swept across continents. This period, known as the Younger Dryas, has become a focus for researchers who believe it may be the origin of the Great Flood myths. Evidence of sudden widespread flooding has been found in North America, where ancient megafloods are believed to have carved out the scablands of Washington state in a matter of days. In the Black Sea, a controversial theory suggests a massive influx of seawater from the Mediterranean, around 7,600 years ago, may have submerged vast areas of land, fueling the legends of Atlantis and the biblical flood. And what about Atlantis itself? The philosopher Plato, writing in the 4th century BCE, described a powerful technologically advanced civilization that was destroyed in a single day and night of floods and earthquakes. He claimed the story came from Egyptian priests, who passed it on to Solon, an Athenian lawmaker. Many scholars dismiss the tale as allegory, but the precision of Plato's account, including its location beyond the Pillars of Hercules and its sudden destruction, continues to inspire researchers looking for a lost chapter of human history. In recent decades, some have proposed that the remnants of this civilization might still exist, submerged beneath rising seas. Off the coast of India, near the Gulf of Combat, underwater structures were discovered that could date back to 9,000 years ago. In Japan, the Yonaguni Monument, a mysterious underwater formation resembling stepped pyramids, has ignited fierce debate about whether it's a natural formation or the work of ancient hands. If advanced civilizations did exist before the end of the last ice age, their cities would have been built along coastlines, now drowned by rising oceans. Their monuments, artifacts, and records would lie hidden beneath hundreds of feet of water, lost to time. The question then becomes, are we just scratching the surface of our own history? Have we dismissed myth as fiction for too long? What if the flood wasn't just a singular event, but a recurring cataclysm, one that comes in cycles, wiping the slate clean every few thousand years? Many ancient texts hint at this, speaking of ages, resets, and the destruction of previous worlds. The Mayans spoke of successive suns and floods that ended each era. The Hopi warned of worlds destroyed by fire and water. In Hindu cosmology, time moves in vast cycles called yugas, periods of rise and fall, birth and annihilation. And here's the most haunting thought: if there was once a great civilization, one advanced enough to map the stars, align megalithic monuments with celestial bodies, and leave behind legends that echo across the planet, then who were they? Where did they go? And could it happen again? The flood myths may not just be warnings from the past, they might be messages, timeless, urgent, and still relevant today, hidden in ancient stories, waiting for us to listen. Chapter 9. The Nazca Lines, Messages to the Sky or Maps for the Gods. In the arid deserts of southern Peru lies one of the world's most enduring and baffling enigmas, the Nazca Lines. Stretching across nearly 200 square miles of barren land, these colossal geoglyphs, some over 1,000 feet long, can only be fully appreciated from the sky. Etched into the earth are hundreds of shapes, spirals, zigzags, animals, plants, humanoid figures, and mysterious straight lines that seem to stretch endlessly, intersecting like runways on some forgotten airfield. Who created them? How did they make them with such precision, without the ability to see the full scale of their work? And perhaps most importantly, why? These massive artworks were crafted by the Nazca people between 500 BCE and 500 CE. They removed the top layer of reddish pebbles, exposing the lighter soil beneath to create long-lasting designs. The dry, windless climate preserved them for centuries, but the real mystery lies not in how they were made, but in what they were made for. Mainstream archaeologists have long debated their purpose. Some suggest the lines were part of astronomical calendars, tracking solstices or aligning with constellations. Others believe they served ceremonial functions, used in religious processions to honor deities or call for rain in this hyper-arid desert. But these theories only scratch the surface. When seen from above, some of these lines resemble perfectly straight runways, kilometers long, etched across hills and valleys with uncanny precision. Certain figures, like the astronaut geoglyph, resemble beings with large heads and circular eyes, waving or pointing skyward. Could this be more than mere art? Here's where the mystery deepens. Some researchers and alternative historians believe the Nazca Lines weren't meant to be seen from the ground at all, but from the air. This simple fact raises a chilling possibility. Were these lines messages to sky-watching gods, or something else entirely? Erich von Däniken, author of Chariots of the Gods, famously proposed that ancient astronauts may have visited the Earth, and that the Nazca Lines were created as landing strips or markers for these beings. Though his ideas are controversial, even mocked by academia, they open the door to a much larger question: why do so many ancient cultures depict strange beings in the sky, beings with wings, helmets, or strange suits, descending from above? What if these weren't just gods, but misunderstood visitors? The Nazca culture was incredibly advanced in its engineering, creating complex aqueducts and underground water channels. Yet we are expected to believe that the same people, without aerial knowledge, created perfect shapes only visible from hundreds of feet in the air, without any way to view or verify their designs. That they etched these shapes over miles of terrain with such scale and proportion, for purely religious or symbolic reasons. Some of the lines align with celestial bodies. The hummingbird geoglyph, for example, is thought to point to the summer solstice sunrise. The monkey figure contains a spiral tail, potentially representing infinity or cyclical time. Could the lines have encoded knowledge of astronomy far beyond what we assume the Nazca people knew? Or were they preserving knowledge passed down from an even older source, perhaps survivors of a lost civilization? Satellite imaging has revealed even more geoglyphs hidden beneath layers of soil, geometric patterns that look like circuits or blueprints. And here's the kicker: similar ground drawings exist across the globe. In Kazakhstan, massive shapes resembling squares, crosses, and rings stretch across the steppe. In Jordan and the Middle East, ancient desert kites, mysterious stone structures, span vast distances and can only be understood from above. What connects these global phenomena? Why this obsession with drawing on a scale only visible from the sky? What if the ancients weren't just looking up? What if they were communicating up? Whether it's the Nazca Lines, the Sumerian tablets, or the Dogon tribe's astronomical knowledge of Sirius B, the pattern is the same. Ancient cultures possessed knowledge, or acted with purpose, that seems wildly out of place for their time. It begs the question: were they taught, guided, or were they trying to signal to something, or someone, far above them? The Nazca Lines may never fully give up their secrets, but in their silence, they speak volumes. They whisper of a forgotten past where the boundaries between gods, stars, and ancient people were far more blurred than we're comfortable admitting. And if those lines were meant as a message, the real question is, has someone already received it? Chapter 10. The Piri Reis Map, a lost knowledge of the ancient world. In 1929, in the dusty basement of Istanbul's Topkapi Palace, a group of scholars stumbled upon a rolled-up parchment. What they found would send shockwaves through both the historical and scientific community, a map dated 1513, drawn by the Ottoman admiral and cartographer Piri Reis. But this was no ordinary navigational chart. It depicted parts of Europe, Africa, and the Americas with astonishing accuracy, long before many of those regions were supposed to have been thoroughly explored. Even more bizarrely, it showed the coastline of Antarctica without ice. Let that sink in. Antarctica wasn't officially discovered until 1820, and it wasn't mapped beneath the ice until 1958, when seismic surveys finally penetrated the thick ice sheets to reveal the actual landmass below. Yet here it was, drawn in near-perfect detail on a map from the early 1500s. How? Piri Reis himself claimed he didn't create the map from scratch. In the notes along its edges, he stated clearly he compiled it using much older source maps, charts that had been passed down for generations, some possibly originating from the time of Alexander the Great, or even earlier. That's where things start to get truly weird. If the map was based on older sources, who made those maps? And how could ancient civilizations have had such precise knowledge of Earth's geography, including landforms they should never have even known existed? One theory is that this knowledge came from a long-lost seafaring civilization, one with a global reach and advanced technology capable of mapping coastlines with accuracy that rivals modern satellite imaging. Could this be evidence of Atlantis, or perhaps a forgotten human civilization that existed before the last ice age, before the cataclysmic event that wiped away their cities, records, and almost every trace of their existence? There's more. The map uses a projection style that wasn't developed in the West until centuries later. It incorporates elements of spherical trigonometry, a mathematical approach used for accurate global navigation, something supposedly unknown to people of that time. It also marks South America with incredible precision, even noting rivers, mountain ranges, and in some interpretations, what could be an inland sea. How did Piri Reis, or whoever made the source maps, know all this? Skeptics argue that it's a coincidence, that parts were filled in based on speculation. But how do you guess an ice-free Antarctica? And why are there multiple maps from the ancient and medieval world that contain similar oddities, like the Orontius Phineas map or the Boucher map, which also appear to depict pre-glacial Antarctica and unknown lands? What if these maps weren't speculative at all? What if they were copies of copies, fragments of a global archive from a time we no longer remember? A time before the Great Flood myths, before the Younger Dryas impact event, before recorded history began. There's a haunting idea here that early explorers like Piri Reis may have been working from the remnants of a world that once was. A world whose knowledge somehow survived, barely, through scattered texts, oral legends, and mysterious artifacts. In the background of every ancient ruin, every unexplained anomaly, and every artifact that doesn't belong, is the whisper of this forgotten age. The Piri Reis Map may be one of the few pieces of evidence we have left, a faint echo of advanced ancient knowledge preserved through war, fire, and centuries of chaos. It's a window into a world that shouldn't exist, and yet it does. So we're left with one burning question. If the Piri Reis Map is real, and the knowledge behind it once existed, who were the map makers, and how much more did they know that we haven't uncovered yet? Chapter 11. The Crystal Skulls, Alien Tech, or Ancient Human Mystery. In the heart of Central America, nestled within dense jungle ruins and dusty excavation sites, lie artifacts so bizarre and baffling that even today's top scientists can't agree on their origin. perfectly carved from clear quartz, with impossible precision. The crystal skulls have haunted archaeologists and researchers for decades. But what if these skulls aren't just ceremonial relics? What if they were created using knowledge far beyond what ancient civilizations were ever supposed to have? There are at least 13 known crystal skulls discovered around the world, from Mexico to Brazil, to even as far as Tibet. Some are life-sized, some are small. But the most famous, and perhaps most mysterious, is the Mitchell-Hedges skull, found or claimed to be found in the 1920s in the ruins of a Mayan city. This skull is perfectly carved from a single block of clear quartz crystal, and here's where things get insane. Quartz crystal is one of the hardest substances on Earth. Even with today's laser tools, shaping it without cracking or shattering it is incredibly difficult. Yet this skull was carved, supposedly by hand, with no signs of modern tools, no markings, no abrasions. Experts say it would take hundreds of years of constant polishing to achieve such perfection, and that's with tools we know of. And then there's the design itself. The jaw is detachable, carved from the same piece of crystal, something that would be nearly impossible without precision machinery. The entire skull mimics human anatomy with eerie detail, down to optical cavities that refract light like real eyes. Who made this? The Mayans? The Aztecs? Or someone? Legends say the skulls weren't just art. They were tools. Some believe they could store information like a computer hard drive, that they were used to communicate with the gods, or perhaps with extraterrestrials. Some even claim that when all 13 crystal skulls are reunited, they will unlock knowledge that can save or destroy humanity. Wild? Yes. But wait, there's more. Native elders from several ancient cultures have passed down eerily similar stories, that the skulls hold the wisdom of the stars, that they came from beings not of this earth, and that they've been hidden around the globe to protect their secrets. And here's where things start to spiral. The quartz crystal used in some skulls is believed to have piezoelectric properties, meaning it can generate an electrical charge under pressure. It's the same material used in modern electronics. Was that a coincidence? Or did the ancient carvers know something we didn't? Then there are the claims of paranormal phenomena. People who have come into contact with the skulls report vivid visions, emotional surges, and unexplainable dreams. Some researchers even say the skulls altered magnetic fields or affected electronic devices during testing. Could these artifacts be remnants of a forgotten advanced civilization? Or could they be not of this earth at all? Here's the unsettling part. For all our modern tech, we still don't know how they were made. No one can replicate them exactly the same way. And every time someone tries, the mystery only deepens. So you have to wonder, why were they made? What were they meant for? And more importantly, who or what carved them? Are the crystal skulls ancient alien relics, a lost technology, or a message encoded in stone, waiting for us to unlock it? Whatever the answer is, one thing is clear. The crystal skulls challenge everything we thought we knew about history, technology, and even the origins of humanity. And maybe, just maybe, the truth behind them is too powerful to be revealed all at once. Chapter 12. The Piri Reis Map. Evidence of Lost Civilizations. In 1929, a group of scholars uncovered a rolled-up parchment in the Topkapi Palace in Istanbul, Turkey. It was a fragment of a world map drawn by the Ottoman admiral and cartographer Piri Reis, dated to the year 1513. At first glance, it looked like a typical early map of the world, but what shocked researchers was what it depicted and what it seemed to suggest. The Piri Reis Map includes remarkably accurate details of the western coast of Africa, the eastern coast of South America, and most mysteriously, the northern edge of Antarctica. But here's the twist. The Antarctic coastline shown on the map is drawn without ice, suggesting detailed knowledge of the continent's landmass before it was covered by glaciers. Modern geological surveys and ice-penetrating radar studies have confirmed that the coastline beneath the Antarctic ice sheet looks similar to the one shown on the map. According to mainstream science, Antarctica has been covered in ice for over 6,000 years, long before any known seafaring civilization could have charted it. Piri Reis himself claimed he did not create the map from scratch. He stated in his notes that he compiled it using about 20 older maps, including charts from ancient Greek, Arabic, and even possibly Phoenician sources. Some he claimed dated back to the time of Alexander the Great. That would place the original sources centuries before Antarctica was even officially discovered in 1820. So how could a 16th century mapmaker have access to such accurate ancient data? Some researchers suggest the map might be a surviving fragment of knowledge from an advanced ancient civilization, one capable of global navigation and precise geographic measurement. Others propose that ancient mariners might have explored Antarctica when it was ice-free, but that would place them thousands of years earlier than current history allows. Mainstream historians typically explain the map's accuracy by saying the southern section may not actually represent Antarctica, but rather a distorted continuation of South America. But this explanation doesn't align with the level of cartographic precision in the rest of the map, which is surprisingly accurate even by today's standards. There are also questions about how ancient cultures could measure longitude so precisely, something that even 18th century European navigators struggled with until the invention of marine chronometers. Yet the Piri Reis Map suggests its source material came from civilizations that might have had a way to do just that. It's not just Antarctica that makes the map strange. Some of the coastlines are shown with detail that wasn't confirmed until modern times, including specific bays, rivers, and even the shape of some islands. Could this map be a remnant of a forgotten global sea culture? Or is it a carefully compiled record from ancient sources that somehow preserved geographical data long before modern exploration? Another theory is that survivors from a lost civilization, possibly Atlantis or another unknown maritime culture, could have passed down knowledge that eventually made its way to Piri Reis through a chain of ancient scholars and navigators. No one knows what happened to the full map. Only 1/3 of it survives. The remaining sections could have contained even more controversial details, but they've never been found. To this day, the Piri Reis Map is considered one of the most baffling documents in cartographic history. It doesn't fit into the conventional timeline, and yet it exists. It's physical, real, and has been studied by modern experts who continue to debate its implications. If it's a forgery, it's an incredibly elaborate one made with knowledge not available at the time. If it's real, it suggests something even more shocking, that we might not be the first advanced civilization with a global understanding of the Earth. Chapter 13. The Ancient Nan Madol. City built on coral reefs. Off the eastern shore of the island of Pohnpei in Micronesia lies one of the most mysterious archaeological sites on Earth. Nan Madol, a complex of over 90 man-made islets constructed with massive basalt stones, connected by canals, and floating atop a coral reef. Often referred to as the Venice of the Pacific, this ancient city raises countless questions, not just about who built it, but how they did it, and why. The site dates back to around 1200 CE, according to radiocarbon dating, but local legends claim that it was built much earlier, by people with extraordinary abilities or even supernatural powers. What makes Nan Madol so perplexing is the scale and logistics of its construction. The entire complex was built using enormous basalt logs, some weighing up to 50 tons, stacked like a giant game of Jenga into walls, up to 25 feet tall and 17 feet thick. There are no records of advanced tools or cranes, no evidence of a wheel, no draft animals, and no clear explanation of how ancient islanders transported these megalithic stones across long distances, some from quarries located miles away on the opposite side of the island. One of the central structures, Nan Duos, is built with walls that seem to defy time, weather, and logic. Archaeologists still don't fully understand how the blocks were lifted and perfectly interlocked to form seawalls that have stood for centuries, despite relentless ocean currents and storms. Local oral traditions describe the city as the home of twin sorcerer brothers, Olosopa and Olosipa, who supposedly flew the stones into place using magic and ruled the island with divine power. While modern historians dismiss these stories as myth, They highlight how ancient people themselves were baffled by the construction, suggesting the knowledge required to build Nan Madol may have predated even their own ancestors. What adds to the mystery is the location. Nan Madol wasn't built inland like other ancient cities, but rather on top of a shallow coral reef, which provided no solid foundation. Why would anyone go through the extreme effort to build a city there, hauling in thousands of tons of stone, instead of settling on firmer ground? Some theories suggest it served as a royal or spiritual capital, a sacred place separated from the rest of the island. Others believe it was designed to isolate the ruling elite, keeping them physically and symbolically above the common people. But there are deeper, stranger possibilities too. Alternative theorists propose that Nan Madol might be the remains of a much older civilization, or even a remnant of Lemuria, a hypothetical sunken continent believed by some to have existed in the Pacific. The precision and scale of construction bear eerie similarities to other megalithic sites around the world, from Egypt to Peru to India. Could there have been a global tradition of lost knowledge and stoneworking techniques passed between ancient cultures, now forgotten? No writing has ever been found at Nan Madol, no tools, no blueprints, only the stones remain, vast dark basalt logs arranged in a pattern so complex and extensive that modern engineers still struggle to understand how it was done without machinery. Even today, the site holds a kind of eerie energy. Locals often avoid it after dark, believing it to be haunted or cursed. Some say that disturbing the ruins invites disaster. Divers exploring the submerged parts of Nan Madol have reported strange experiences, disorientation, equipment failure, and even intense feelings of dread. Is Nan Madol just a marvel of human perseverance and ingenuity? Or is it a surviving piece of a forgotten chapter in human history, one where the lines between technology, spirituality, and myth were far more blurred than we realize? Whatever the answer, Nan Madol refuses to give up its secrets. It stands in the surf, silent and immovable, as if guarding a story that modern science still isn't ready to hear. Chapter 14. The Baigong Pipes, Alien Technology, or Ancient Wonder. In the remote highlands of western China, near the summit of Mount Baigong, lies a bizarre and little understood mystery, one that seems to defy explanation, logic, and even the boundaries of human history. Known as the Baigong Pipes, these ancient rust-colored tubes emerge from the mountainside and run deep into the surrounding rock and lake bed. But the real question isn't just what they are, it's how they got there and who or what put them there. Discovered near Lake Tosan Hu, a saltwater lake, in a desolate and largely uninhabited area of Qinghai Province, the Baigong Pipes appear to be a network of metallic tubes embedded in both the mountain itself and beneath the lake. Some are as thick as a human leg, while others are as small as matchsticks. The pipes seem to lead into a triangular cave near the mountain's summit, a cave now collapsed and inaccessible, but long rumored by locals to be linked to visitors from the stars. Here's where things get even stranger. Analysis of the pipes by Chinese scientists found that they're composed of iron oxide, silicon dioxide, and calcium oxide, but also something far more puzzling, an unknown percentage of materials not identifiable by modern techniques. Even more bizarre, tests suggested that the pipes had been subjected to extremely high temperatures, and some even contained traces of radioactive material. These aren't signs of natural formations. These are clues, but to what we still don't know. Some geologists have suggested that the pipes might be fossilized tree roots or natural iron-rich mineral formations. But this theory falls apart when considering the geometric regularity and uniform diameter of the pipes. Nature doesn't form straight metal tubes that connect mountain chambers to lake beds, especially not in grids and networks that seem engineered for a purpose. Now here's where ancient astronaut theorists jump in. According to them, the Baigong Pipes could be evidence of a non-human presence on Earth thousands of years ago. Perhaps a landing site, a water extraction system, or even part of a larger underground technological structure long buried beneath the mountain. Some go as far as to speculate that it was once an alien outpost, a base, now abandoned and weathered by millennia. Adding to the mystery, the nearby region has long been steeped in folklore about sky beings and strange lights in the night sky. Local legends tell of ancient visitors from the heavens who once came to Earth and built structures with powers and materials unknown to man. And while these may sound like stories, they often echo ancient myths from far corners of the world, from the Anunnaki in Mesopotamia to the Viracochas in South America. But if these pipes were part of an ancient high-tech system, whether built by humans or someone else, the biggest question remains: why were they abandoned? What happened here that led to the collapse of whatever this system was? Despite being discovered decades ago, the Baigong Pipes have not been fully excavated, studied, or preserved. The area is remote, difficult to access, and scientific interest seems to have quietly faded. Some suspect this is due to pressure to avoid public speculation about alien technology. Others believe it's simply due to the site being too obscure and too controversial for mainstream science to take seriously. But one thing is clear: these aren't ordinary mineral veins or random rock formations. Their placement, shape, and material composition scream intention and ancient purpose. Could this be a relic of a forgotten civilization that mastered metallurgy long before the known empires? Could it be a remnant of ancient advanced technology, human or otherwise, that time has tried to erase? Whatever the answer is, the Baigong Pipes sit in silence, buried in stone and salt, waiting for the world to ask the right questions, or perhaps ready to reveal something we aren't yet ready to understand. Chapter 15. The Ural Relief Map. Ancient Topography, or Alien Blueprint. Buried in the heart of Russia's Ural Mountains lies a discovery so strange, so precise, that it threatens to upend everything we think we know about ancient civilization's capabilities. Known as the Nazca Stone, or more controversially, the Ural Relief Map, this artifact is no ordinary rock. It appears to be a topographical map of a region of the Urals, complete with intricate details, rivers, dams, irrigation canals, and even evidence of artificial engineering. But here's the kicker: this map wasn't made in modern times. It's believed to be over 100 million years old. Let that sink in for a moment. The Nazca Stone is a flat, heavy slab measuring about 5 feet long, 3.5 feet wide, and 6 inches thick. It was discovered in 1999 by a team of scientists and archaeologists near the village of Chandar. At first glance, it looks like a weathered piece of rock until you look closer. Carved into its surface is a highly accurate relief map of a section of the Ural Mountains as seen from the air, including man-made features that seemingly shouldn't exist at the time it was created. Researchers from the University of Bashkir claim that this artifact is not natural, but the result of advanced knowledge and tools. According to them, the precision of the terrain, the mathematical layout, the exact scale, suggests the stone was manufactured using technology far beyond the means of any known ancient civilization. The level of accuracy, comparable to modern satellite imaging. And that's not the most chilling part. Chemical analysis of the stone revealed something even weirder. It was made from 3 distinct layers: a dolomite base, a diopside middle, and a thin porcelain-like glaze on top. This kind of composite structure isn't something you'd expect from an ancient or even medieval artifact. It's engineering, intentional, as if someone wanted to preserve the data on it forever. This leads to one massive, unavoidable question: who created it? Mainstream archaeologists are quick to dismiss it. Some call it a coincidence, others say it might be an artistic or symbolic representation. But when laid side by side with modern topographical data, the similarities are undeniable. The rivers match. The elevation is spot on. The artificial-looking structures, canals, dams, and levees seem to suggest not just observation, but terraforming. Was there a civilization, not just ancient but prehistoric, that once mapped the Earth from the skies? If so, where are they now? Why is there no other record of such a people? Or is it possible that this wasn't human work at all? Here's a thought to sit with. What if the Dashka stone is not a relic of the past, but a remnant of a forgotten age, a time when Earth may have been visited, or even occupied, by an advanced intelligence capable of aerial mapping, engineering landscapes, and leaving behind traces hidden in stone? The Russian military reportedly took interest in the site soon after its discovery. Some say access has been restricted ever since. The map's current whereabouts? Unclear. Some claim it's in a government facility, away from public eyes. Others say it's simply been lost, or buried again. But the implications remain. This isn't just about a rock with lines on it. It's about what those lines mean. It's about the knowledge behind the craft, and what kind of civilization or species could have possessed it. If the Dashka stone is real, and all evidence so far says it is, then it rewrites our entire understanding of human history, or worse, forces us to admit that we've never truly been alone on this planet. Chapter 16. The Mysterious Dropa Stones, Alien Crash or Ancient Technology Lost to Time. In the remote and nearly inaccessible mountains of Baigong Pipes, on the border between China and Tibet, a discovery was made that has baffled archaeologists, linguists, and UFO researchers for decades. These are the Dropa Stones, a set of mysterious circular stone discs that could rewrite the story of humanity or reveal an encounter with an intelligence not of this world. The story begins in 1938 when a Chinese expedition led by Professor Piri Reis set out to explore the caves of the Baigong Pipes region. What they found inside wasn't ordinary cave art or primitive tools. It was something much stranger. In the depths of those dark caverns, the team discovered rows of small skeletons, no more than 4 feet tall, buried with bizarre round stone discs. Each disc was roughly 1 foot in diameter, with a perfect hole in the center and a strange spiraling groove etched into the surface, much like a phonograph record. But these grooves weren't just decorative, they were inscribed with tiny, almost microscopic hieroglyph-like characters that didn't match any known language. For years, the stones sat in obscurity. The Chinese government suppressed information about the discovery. But in the 1960s, a Chinese professor named Tem Nui reportedly cracked the code of the strange inscriptions, and what he found was mind-blowing. According to his controversial translation, the Dropa Stones tell the story of an extraterrestrial spacecraft that crash-landed in the mountains thousands of years ago. The beings inside, the Dropa, were stranded and unable to repair their ship. They took refuge in the caves and tried to coexist with the local tribes, who were initially terrified of them. The texts even describe conflicts, intermarriage, and the death of many Dropa due to being hunted as invaders. Over time, their memory faded into legend until the skeletons and stones were unearthed again in the 20th century. This is where things get even weirder. After Tem Nui released his findings, he was ridiculed, his research was banned, and he disappeared from public life. Some say he fled to Japan. Others claim he was silenced. The Dropa Stones? Many vanished. A few supposedly made their way to museums, then disappeared again. A handful of photographs remain, but even those are considered too controversial to be authentic by mainstream academics. Critics argue it's all a hoax, that the translation never happened, or that the stones are just ancient ritual artifacts. But here's the issue. No one can replicate the script. No one can explain the precision of the spiral grooves, and no one can offer a plausible alternative. And then there's the shape. Why would a Stone Age culture make circular discs with a perfect central hole and spiral text unless they had some idea of rotation, movement, playback? Were the Dropa stones more than records? Could they have been storage devices of some kind, containing knowledge, a message, or even data encoded in a way we don't yet understand? And why do similar discs appear in other parts of the world, from Sumeria to South America? Are these cultures echoing a shared event, or is there something deeper at play? To this day, the Dropa stones remain a forbidden topic in many academic circles in China. It's as if someone doesn't want us to ask the right questions, maybe because the answers are too uncomfortable. Did the Dropa exist? Were they truly not from this earth, or are we staring at another piece of advanced ancient technology misinterpreted as myth? What if the greatest cover-up of all time isn't hiding aliens in the skies, but in our past? Chapter 17. The Lost Labyrinth of Egypt, a megastructure erased from history. We've all heard of the Great Pyramid of Giza and the Sphinx, but what if we told you there's another structure in Egypt? One that dwarfs all others in complexity and may hold secrets far beyond tombs and treasure. A forgotten place called the Lost Labyrinth of Hawara, described by ancient historians as a structure so vast and so intricate, it was said to surpass the pyramids themselves. Greek historian Herodotus, writing in the 5th century BCE, claimed to have seen it with his own eyes. He described a colossal underground maze with over 3,000 rooms spread across multiple levels. Some chambers were above ground, but the vast majority were hidden beneath, sealed off and unreachable. Herodotus wasn't the only one. Ancient writers like Strabo, Diodorus Siculus, and Pliny the Elder all spoke of this labyrinth. They wrote of endless halls, inscriptions on the walls, and a place used not just for burial, but for preserving sacred knowledge. So what happened to it? Incredibly, modern archaeology has found evidence that the labyrinth was real. In the 1800s, explorer Carl Richard Lipsius claimed to have found the remains of the labyrinth near the Pyramid of Amenemhat III at Hawara, south of Cairo. But here's where things get strange. In 2008, a group of researchers known as the Madha expedition used ground-penetrating radar on the site. What they found was shocking: a massive, complex network of underground cavities, consistent with the size and scope of the ancient descriptions. The team confirmed the presence of gigantic man-made chambers beneath the sands. And then, silence. The findings were never fully published. The Egyptian authorities restricted access, and researchers were told not to speak publicly. The area was quickly sealed off, with no further excavations allowed. Why? Some believe the labyrinth contains records from a pre-dynastic civilization, possibly even from a lost culture that predates Egypt itself. Others think it holds evidence of ancient technology, or even alien influence. What were the inscriptions on the walls? Why did the ancients fear what lay beneath? What if the labyrinth was a repository of forgotten knowledge, a sort of ancient hard drive that someone doesn't want us to access? Or worse, what if it still holds something humanity isn't ready to discover? Mainstream Egyptologists claim the structure was destroyed or never existed. But that doesn't explain the ground scans or why the Egyptian government is suppressing modern exploration of the site. Could the real history of Egypt be hidden in that underground maze? Could it be the key to understanding the origins of not just Egyptian civilization, but all of human history? And why is it that the closer we get to physical proof of these myths, the faster the doors seem to close? Chapter 18. Göbekli Tepe. The site that shouldn't exist in the dusty hills of southeastern Turkey lies a site so old, so advanced, that it shattered everything archaeologists thought they knew about human history. It's called Göbekli Tepe, and it may be the oldest known temple on Earth. Dating back over 12,000 years, Göbekli Tepe predates the invention of writing, the wheel, agriculture, even the first cities. That's 7,000 years older than the Great Pyramid. It was built during a time when, according to mainstream history, humans were still living in small nomadic tribes, hunting, gathering, and just trying to survive. Yet somehow, these so-called primitive people created a megalithic complex of monumental stone pillars weighing up to 20 tons each, arranged in precise circular formations. The stones are carved with intricate images of animals, symbols, and humanoid figures, and some symbols seem eerily familiar, almost as if they were part of a forgotten language. Here's the mystery: why would hunter-gatherers build a massive ceremonial site? According to our history books, humans only started building temples after agriculture gave them stable food sources. But Göbekli Tepe flips that on its head. It suggests that spiritual or cosmic knowledge came first, and civilization followed. It's almost as if something or someone taught them. Could this site be the remains of a forgotten civilization, one that survived a global cataclysm, like the end of the Ice Age? Even stranger, the builders eventually buried the site intentionally under thousands of tons of soil. This wasn't a collapse or abandonment, it was a deliberate act, like they were hiding it. But from what, or for whom? And that's not all. Many of the symbols found at Göbekli Tepe match astronomical alignments. Some researchers believe the stone circles map out constellations or record a cosmic event, possibly a comet impact that happened around 10,800 BCE, the same time frame as the Younger Dryas period, a mysterious global climate shift that may have wiped out entire civilizations. So here's the real question. How did a group of supposedly primitive humans carve and move massive stones, align them to the stars, and encode symbolic language before agriculture even existed? Was Göbekli Tepe built by a lost advanced culture that predated known civilization? Was it a cosmic message meant to warn or guide future humanity? Or was it a gift from something non-human? Knowledge passed down from the stars, now buried under centuries of dust and secrecy. We're not supposed to ask these questions, but the site is real, the dating is real, and the mystery is very real. And just like other ancient sites that challenge the narrative, the more we uncover, the more authorities seem to cover up. Who really built Göbekli Tepe, and why is the truth being buried again? Chapter 19. The Dropa Stones. Ancient Alien Records or Forbidden Hoax. In the remote Bayan Har Mountains of China, near the border of Tibet, a discovery was made in the 1930s that, if true, could completely rewrite human history and maybe even point to contact with extraterrestrial beings thousands of years ago. Archaeologists stumbled upon a series of mysterious caves in the region. Inside, they found burial sites containing tiny, frail skeletons, no more than 4 feet tall, with unusually large skulls. These weren't ordinary ancient humans. They seemed anatomically different, maybe even genetically. But what really shocked researchers wasn't the skeletons, it was what they found buried with them. Dozens of strange circular stone discs, later known as the Dropa Stones. These discs were about a foot in diameter, with a hole in the center, much like a vinyl record. But instead of grooves for music, they were etched with microscopic spiral inscriptions, so small they could only be seen under magnification. These weren't random scratches, they were deliberate. An unknown form of writing. After decades of secrecy, one Chinese researcher named Dr. Tu Sum Nui claimed to have decoded the symbols. According to his translation, the discs told the story of an extraterrestrial spacecraft that crash-landed in the mountains thousands of years ago. The beings inside, the Dropa, couldn't fix their ship, so they integrated with the local people. The discs described their tragic attempt to survive on Earth, misunderstood, feared, and eventually buried in the mountains, along with their message. It sounds like science fiction, right? But here's where it gets strange. Shortly after Dr. Tu Sum Nui published his work, his career was discredited, and his findings were buried, literally and figuratively. The Chinese government refused to acknowledge the story, the stones disappeared, and mainstream academia branded the entire thing a hoax, even though no one has ever proven it false. Some believe the Dropa stones are now locked away in secret archives, possibly under military control. But why hide them? Is it because they don't fit the accepted version of history? A version that insists humans evolved alone, without outside influence? Or is it because the Dropa stones are evidence of intelligent contact, long before our current civilization ever existed? If the inscriptions are real, and there's physical evidence that suggests they are, then someone had a reason to erase this chapter of history. Why? Because it opens a door that can't be closed. A door that forces us to ask, are we really the first intelligent species on Earth, or were we visited, maybe even engineered? And if we were, are they still watching? Chapter 20. The Libyan Desert Glass. Remnants of an Ancient Atomic Blast. In the vast emptiness of the Sahara Desert, far from any modern civilization, lies a strange, natural glass, glowing yellow-green fragments scattered across the Libyan desert. known as Libyan desert glass. These pieces are incredibly pure, nearly 99% silica, and they cover an area of over 6,000 square kilometers. But here's the kicker: to form glass that pure, you need extreme heat, hotter than a nuclear explosion. That's not an exaggeration. Even modern science struggles to recreate such purity without controlled industrial settings. And yet, here it is, laying on the desert floor, untouched for thousands of years. So the big question is, what caused it? Some geologists suggest a meteor exploded in the atmosphere, creating a massive fireball that flash melted the sand below. Others say it could have been a comet. But there's a problem with both of these theories. No solid impact crater has ever been found in the region. And still, this glass exists in massive quantities. But there's another theory, a darker one. What if the glass is the aftermath of an ancient nuclear explosion? Not by modern nations, but by a lost civilization, one so advanced, it harnessed technologies we barely understand. Sound far-fetched? Maybe. But consider this. The ancient Hindu texts, particularly the Mahabharata, describe devastating weapons that turned sand into glass, scorched the skies, and left survivors with hair and nails falling out, eerily similar to radiation sickness. These writings are thousands of years old. So were they describing myth or memory? Even more curious, Tutankhamun's famous scarab pendant, found in his tomb, is made from Libyan desert glass. That's right. A stone formed in unimaginable heat, was worn by an Egyptian pharaoh as a symbol of power and protection. But how did the Egyptians even know about it, let alone collect it? Was the glass a sacred relic from a forgotten age, or a warning of what once happened, and could happen again? If this was the result of a weapon, then who used it? Where did they go? And what kind of civilization had the capability to unleash atomic-level destruction long before we even invented electricity? Some researchers believe the answers are buried, not just in the desert, but in our collective past. A past that keeps revealing signs that humanity may not have been alone in its early journey. Maybe we rose and fell, more than once, and the glass. It's just the shattered evidence of a time when Earth played host to something beyond explanation. Chapter 21. The Lost Knowledge of the Dogon. Secrets from Sirius. Deep in the arid cliffs of Mali, West Africa, lies a tribe whose knowledge has baffled scientists, historians, and astronomers for decades. They are the Dogon people, a relatively small and isolated ethnic group whose cosmology holds a mystery that defies explanation. For centuries, the Dogon have passed down complex astronomical knowledge through oral traditions, and some of that knowledge appears far too advanced to have been discovered without modern telescopes. Most notably, their understanding of the Sirius star system has drawn massive attention. According to the Dogon, Sirius isn't a single star but a system containing Sirius A, the brightest star in our night sky, and a hidden smaller companion star, which they call Potolo. Now here's where it gets strange. Sirius B, the companion star the Dogon described, is invisible to the naked eye. It's a white dwarf star that orbits Sirius A every 50 years. Western astronomers didn't even confirm its existence until 1862, and its incredibly dense nature wasn't measured until the 20th century. Yet the Dogon have spoken of this star for generations. They not only described its orbit, but also said it was the heaviest thing in the universe, a property consistent with the density of white dwarfs. How could an ancient tribe, isolated in the cliffs of Mali, possess such advanced astronomical knowledge without telescopes or modern science? This puzzle sparked a flurry of theories. Some researchers suggested ancient contact with extraterrestrials. Others believed it might be evidence of a forgotten advanced civilization that once shared knowledge with early humans. Still, skeptics proposed that perhaps this knowledge was introduced to the Dogon by visiting Europeans in the 20th century, though there's no conclusive evidence of this. But the Dogon cosmology doesn't stop at Sirius. They describe the entire formation of the universe in ways that strikingly resemble modern astrophysical concepts. According to their mythology, The universe began with a cosmic egg, the Amma's egg, which exploded, forming stars and matter. This resembles the modern Big Bang theory. They even depict a spiral motion of galaxies, and their rituals include symbolic references to atoms, particles, and forces. How could such ancient oral traditions align so closely with modern physics? Let's look deeper into Dogon symbolism. Their sacred art includes intricate depictions of their cosmology, spirals, double helices, and geometric patterns that resemble DNA structures and orbital motion. Were these symbols metaphorical, or were they attempts to encode real technical information in an esoteric form? This question isn't just academic, it touches the core of how ancient societies interacted with the cosmos. Could it be that they had access to knowledge we've only just rediscovered, or that they retained information lost during some catastrophic disruption of a prior advanced civilization? There's also the matter of the Dogon's calendars and rituals. Their ceremonial calendar aligns with the 50-year orbit of Sirius B, a cycle that they've tracked for hundreds of years. In their most sacred ceremony, the Sigi held once every 60 years, the Dogon wear elaborate masks representing the ancestors and the stars. The frequency of this ritual seems synchronized not with the solar calendar but with celestial mechanics. And here's where it gets even stranger. The Dogon claim their ancestors came from Sirius. Not metaphorically, literally. Their legends speak of beings called the Nomo, amphibious creatures who descended from the sky in a spinning vessel. These beings, they say, came to Earth to bring knowledge and guide humanity. The Nomo are described as part human, part fish, often compared to deities or angelic beings. The Dogon say they came in a reddish arc, which made a great noise and whirled as it landed. To some, this sounds suspiciously like a UFO account cloaked in mythological language. Could the Nomo have been ancient astronauts? That idea, while controversial, has gained traction in fringe science circles. The thought that humanity's ancestors were seeded or taught by intelligent beings from other star systems is a recurring theme in many ancient mythologies, from the Sumerian Anunnaki to the Mayan sky gods. And here's another twist: similar myths of star beings and sky gods exist across Africa, Oceania, and the Americas, many referencing Sirius as the point of origin. Why this particular star? Why does Sirius keep appearing in ancient narratives across cultures that were never in contact with each other? To this day, anthropologists continue to study the Dogon, trying to untangle whether their advanced astronomical knowledge is an anomaly, a coincidence, or evidence of something much bigger. Could it be that the Dogon are the last custodians of a legacy left behind by ancient star visitors? Or are they the inheritors of a much older terrestrial civilization that mastered astronomy long before history remembers? The mystery remains. We have no definitive proof, only clues. Oral traditions, ritual cycles, cosmic symbolism, and the hauntingly accurate knowledge of an invisible star locked in orbit around Sirius, long before we had the tools to find it ourselves. And if the Dogon are right, what else might they know? What other secrets could still be hidden among their myths, waiting to be decoded? This is just one thread in the vast and tangled web of ancient knowledge that science can't yet explain. Chapter 22. The Antikythera Mechanism, the ancient computer that shouldn't exist. In 1901, off the coast of the small Greek island of Antikythera, sponge divers stumbled upon the wreckage of an ancient Roman-era ship. Among the treasure trove of statues, pottery, and jewelry, they found something that would take more than a century to fully understand: a heavily corroded lump of bronze and wood that seemed unremarkable at first glance. But when researchers cleaned and examined it, they uncovered something that would challenge our understanding of ancient technology forever. It became known as the Antikythera Mechanism, a device over 2,000 years old, which is now recognized as the world's first known analog computer. What makes this mechanism so astonishing is its complexity. It was crafted in the 2nd century BCE, yet it contains dozens of interlocking bronze gears, precisely cut and meticulously arranged. These gears work together to calculate the positions of celestial bodies, the sun, the moon, and possibly even the 5 known planets, and could predict lunar and solar eclipses decades in advance. Let's put that into context. This device predates the development of mechanical clocks in Europe by over 1,000 years. There was nothing even close to this level of sophistication found anywhere in the ancient world, until now. Using high-resolution X-ray scans and 3D modeling, scientists discovered that the Antikythera Mechanism featured a hand-cranked dial that could simulate the passage of time and celestial movement. One dial represented the 19-year Metonic cycle, crucial for predicting lunar phases. Another tracked the Saros cycle, essential for eclipse predictions. There's even evidence suggesting that it could account for the irregular orbit of the moon using a differential gear, a type of mechanism thought to have been invented in the 16th century. So how could something so precise, so advanced, be made in a time when iron tools were still rudimentary? That question has sparked a storm of debate among historians and scientists alike. Some attribute it to the genius of one individual, possibly Hipparchus or Archimedes, but that still leaves an open question even if one mind conceived it. How did the technological infrastructure exist to actually build it? The materials, the tools, the metalworking skill, it would have required a level of industrial precision we don't associate with ancient Greece. No other similar mechanisms have ever been discovered from that era. Nothing. It appears as a one-off, an anomaly that shouldn't exist. So we're left with a mystery. Did the ancient Greeks briefly touch a level of technology that was quickly lost to time, destroyed in wars or fires, and never replicated? Or did they inherit knowledge from an even older forgotten civilization? Some fringe theorists have taken the implications even further. They propose that the Antikythera Mechanism is a remnant, not of Greek innovation, but of an earlier, more advanced society, perhaps one that was wiped out in a catastrophe, like the mythical Atlantis. The device, they suggest, may have been a surviving artifact, passed through generations, eventually falling into the hands of seafaring traders who didn't fully understand its origin. Others speculate about ancient extraterrestrial influence, that such precision and astronomical knowledge was given to early humans to preserve or track cosmic events. After all, how could such accuracy in planetary motion and eclipses be attained without long-term observational data, complex mathematics, and advanced engineering? Still, the mainstream narrative holds that this was the pinnacle of Hellenistic science, a marvel that was centuries ahead of its time, lost in the chaos of history. But even that raises troubling questions. If the Antikythera Mechanism was a product of advanced Greek engineering, why haven't we found more like it? Were these devices common among elite scholars and simply lost, or was this one of only a few that ever existed, its complexity kept secret or reserved for sacred or royal use? Imagine what would have happened if this level of technology had continued to develop. Mechanical computing in the Roman Empire, celestial tracking machines used for navigation and agriculture, entirely new directions for science and engineering, centuries ahead of schedule. But instead, the knowledge was lost, forgotten, erased by time, war, and the fragility of civilization. Today, what remains are fragments, 82 corroded pieces housed in a museum in Athens. Researchers are still decoding its full function. In fact, new revelations are still being made. In 2021, scientists reconstructed its front display, suggesting it also tracked planetary movements, which, if confirmed, would mean it was essentially a mechanical model of the entire solar system. Let that sink in, an ancient mechanical model of the solar system, built before telescopes, before Newton, before Copernicus. So the Antikythera Mechanism forces us to ask some uncomfortable questions. What else have we lost? How many breakthroughs have been buried beneath the oceans or ground into dust by the passage of time? And most importantly, if such advanced technology existed 2,000 years ago, what does that say about the real scope of ancient human knowledge? Was history truly linear, a slow progression from primitive to complex, or were there peaks of advancement now forgotten, waiting to be rediscovered? The Antikythera Mechanism may be just the tip of the iceberg. Chapter 23. The Great Zimbabwe, a lost city of giants, or a forgotten civilization. In the heart of southern Africa lies a mysterious ruin that has baffled historians, archaeologists, and explorers for centuries: Great Zimbabwe. Situated in present-day Zimbabwe, this ancient stone city rises from the savannah like a forgotten monument to a civilization whose true story remains largely untold. Great Zimbabwe isn't just a small settlement. At its peak, it was the largest city in sub-Saharan Africa, covering over 700 hectares. Massive dry stone walls, some towering over 30 feet high and stretching for hundreds of feet, were constructed without mortar. Using a technique so precise and advanced, it remains impressive even by today's standards. But who built it? When? And most importantly, why? Archaeologists date the construction of Great Zimbabwe to between the 11th and 15th centuries EE. It's believed to have been the center of a powerful kingdom, possibly housing up to 20,000 inhabitants. But that answer, while neat on paper, doesn't fully explain the enigma. For centuries, outsiders refused to believe that indigenous African people could have built such a complex structure. Early European explorers and colonial scholars concocted theories that attributed the ruins to ancient Phoenicians, Arabs, even survivors from the lost city of Atlantis. These theories have since been discredited, but they highlight just how strange and out of place the city seemed to those who stumbled upon it. The structures themselves offer few clues. There are no inscriptions, no written records, no grand murals or scrolls left behind. And yet, the stonework is masterful. Massive granite blocks precisely carved and layered in intricate flowing patterns. The famous Great Enclosure, with its 800-foot-long outer wall, features a 30-foot-high conical tower whose purpose remains completely unknown. No one has found any tomb, treasure, or clear function associated with it. Some scholars believe it was a symbolic or religious structure. Others think it was a royal granary, a power symbol for the elite. But its sheer scale and mystery have led many to speculate about something far more ancient and lost. Could Great Zimbabwe be older than we think? Here's where things take a strange turn. In some oral traditions, the ruins are said to be the remains of a city built by giants, beings of enormous size and strength who once walked the earth and constructed megalithic structures across Africa and beyond. These stories bear striking similarities to legends from other parts of the world: the Nephilim in the Bible, the giants of Greek mythology, and the builders of the Cyclopean walls in Peru. Some local legends claim that Great Zimbabwe was built by a god-king named Nazca Lines, who ruled over a vast territory with knowledge of the stars and deep spiritual power. Others speak of a lost race of advanced humans, capable of moving and shaping stones in ways modern engineers still struggle to replicate. Add to that the discovery of artifacts like soapstone birds, complex gold jewelry, and trade goods from as far away as China and Persia, and the mystery only deepens. Great Zimbabwe wasn't isolated. It was part of a vast trade network, suggesting a highly organized, sophisticated society. But why is there so little historical record of such a significant civilization? What happened to them? Why did they abandon this monumental city? Mainstream archaeology suggests environmental decline, perhaps overgrazing, deforestation, or the drying of rivers that supported the population. Political collapse or conflict could also have played a role. But again, that explanation leaves gaps. A city this large, this influential, should have echoes in the records of neighboring peoples, traders, or oral histories, but we find only whispers. It's as if the builders of Great Zimbabwe vanished, their knowledge and culture swallowed by time. More fringe researchers propose that Great Zimbabwe wasn't just a city, but part of a global network of ancient power sites, connected through ley lines or electromagnetic energy fields. They point to the geometric precision of its layout and the similarities in stone construction with sites halfway across the world, from Machu Picchu to Angkor Wat to the pyramids of Egypt. Could ancient civilizations have been more connected than we assume? Some even suggest extraterrestrial intervention, claiming that advanced beings may have seeded technological knowledge across early human cultures, and Great Zimbabwe was one of many hubs for such contact. While such ideas are controversial, they persist because of one simple fact: we don't have definitive answers. Even today, many areas of the ruins remain unexcavated. Political tension, preservation concerns, and lack of funding have stalled deeper exploration. What secrets still lie buried beneath the grasslands? What technologies or truths might be waiting, hidden in the soil, carved in stone, or encoded in sacred geometry? The story of Great Zimbabwe reminds us that human history is far more complex than the neat timelines taught in school. Across the globe, there are ruins that don't fit the narrative, places that speak of forgotten knowledge, lost peoples, and mysteries that challenge our understanding of who we are and where we came from. Great Zimbabwe is not just a ruin, it's a riddle, a monument to a past we can't fully explain, and maybe a whisper from an ancient world that still holds its secrets tightly. Chapter 24. The Antikythera Mechanism. An ancient computer thousands of years ahead of its time. Imagine a device so advanced, so precise, that it could predict solar eclipses, track planetary movements, and even calculate the timing of ancient Olympic Games. And now imagine that it was built over 2,000 years ago by an ancient civilization we thought lacked the technology to create anything even remotely close. This is not fiction. This is the Antikythera Mechanism, one of the most baffling and sophisticated artifacts ever discovered in the archaeological record. It was found in 1901 by sponge divers exploring a Roman-era shipwreck near the Greek island of Antikythera. Among the bronze statues and amphorae, they pulled up a corroded, gear-filled lump of metal, unremarkable at first glance. For decades, it sat in a museum, misclassified and ignored, until X-ray imaging revealed something that shocked the scientific community. Inside that crusted lump was a complex arrangement of gears, wheels, dials, and inscriptions, all working together as a single machine. And what it did was nothing short of miraculous. It mapped the heavens. Modern researchers now understand that the Antikythera mechanism functioned as a mechanical computer built sometime between 150 and 100 BCE. It used a system of at least 30 bronze gears, possibly more, to simulate the movement of the Sun, Moon, and possibly all 5 known planets at the time: Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. One dial tracked the 4-year Olympic cycle. Another predicted lunar and solar eclipses with stunning accuracy. How is this possible? The level of craftsmanship in the Antikythera mechanism wasn't just advanced, it was impossibly advanced for its time. The Greeks of that era didn't even have clockwork mechanisms as we understand them. This technology didn't reappear until the 14th century CE, more than a millennium later. So the obvious question is, who built it, and where did this knowledge come from? Mainstream scholars credit it to Greek mathematicians, possibly connected to the school of Archimedes or Hipparchus. But that explanation opens another mystery. If they had the knowledge to create this device, why don't we see more like it? Why didn't this technology spark a revolution in mechanics and astronomy? Why was it seemingly lost for centuries? Some researchers suggest that the Antikythera mechanism was a one-of-a-kind masterpiece, the culmination of knowledge held by a secretive guild of philosophers or engineers. If that's true, it raises even more questions. What else did they know? What other devices or technologies might have existed and been lost to history? Other, more speculative theories suggest something much deeper. Could it be a relic of an even older civilization, a remnant of advanced knowledge passed down from a lost culture like Atlantis, Lemuria, or some now submerged society? One theory proposes that the Greeks inherited this technology from Egyptian or Mesopotamian sources, who in turn received it from even more ancient peoples, whose records were erased by cataclysmic events. There's even speculation about extraterrestrial influence, that beings not of this earth might have gifted or seeded this knowledge among early humans, only for it to be misunderstood, misused, or lost entirely. But we don't need aliens to recognize that the Antikythera mechanism doesn't fit the timeline. The precision engineering of its gear teeth alone suggests a deep understanding of mechanical physics and metalworking far ahead of its time. The gearing ratios, many of which correspond to astronomical cycles like the Metonic cycle, 19 years, and the Saros cycle, 223 lunar months, indicate a mastery of celestial movements that would have required generations of observation and data. Here's what adds to the mystery. No historical record exists that directly mentions such a device. None. Not even by historians like Pliny the Elder or Cicero, who were known for documenting technical marvels. It's as if this device came out of nowhere and then vanished. In recent years, modern reconstructions of the mechanism have proven it could perform astonishing calculations. And yet, we still don't fully understand it. Every year, new imaging techniques reveal more complexity, more tiny inscriptions, more hidden gear connections, suggesting that even now we're only scratching the surface. So what does the Antikythera mechanism really tell us? It tells us that our ancestors may have been far more advanced than we give them credit for. That timelines are not as linear as we imagine. That genius, innovation, and deep cosmic understanding existed in corners of the ancient world we thought were primitive. It also warns us about the fragility of knowledge. A device like this could have sparked a scientific revolution, yet it was lost at sea, buried for 2,000 years, and nearly ignored by modern science. How many other wonders lie beneath the ocean? In caves? In deserts? How many pieces of the puzzle have we already missed? The Antikythera mechanism is not just a tool, it's a message from the past, a whisper from a civilization that may have understood the cosmos in ways we're only beginning to rediscover. It challenges our assumptions, it defies historical convention, and above all, it invites us to look deeper, to wonder what else lies just beyond the veil of what we think we know. Chapter 25. The Dropa Stones. Messages from the Stars or a Masterful Hoax. High in the isolated mountains of the Bayan Har region, nestled deep within the rugged terrain of the Chinese-Tibetan border, lies a mystery that has perplexed researchers, archaeologists, and conspiracy theorists alike for decades. A mystery that, if true, could completely rewrite not just human history, but our place in the universe. This is the enigma of the Dropa Stones, a series of strange, ancient stone discs, unlike anything else ever discovered. It began in 1938, when Chinese archaeologist Chebul Tay led an expedition into the Bayan Kara Ula Mountains. Deep within a series of caves, his team uncovered small skeletal remains, fragile, humanoid forms with disproportionately large skulls and spindly limbs. At first, they were believed to be the remains of apes, or perhaps an ancient mountain tribe. But then came the real shocker: over 700 flat, circular stone discs, each about a foot in diameter with a perfect hole in the center, like a stone record. But these weren't just decorative or ceremonial objects. Each disc was etched with microscopic grooves, spiraling out from the center like the data tracks of a modern vinyl record. When examined under magnification, researchers found that these grooves were tiny, ancient inscriptions written in a language unlike anything previously known. According to reports, it took decades to decode just a portion of the script. And what they allegedly revealed sent shockwaves through the few who dared to believe it. The translations told the story of a spacecraft that crash-landed in the region around 12,000 years ago. The beings aboard, called the Dropa, were not gods or spirits, but extraterrestrial travelers from a distant star system. Stranded on Earth, they sought refuge in the mountains and attempted to coexist with the local people. At first, the indigenous tribes rejected and even hunted the Dropa, but eventually, peace was established. The implication is staggering. Not only would this suggest that humans made contact with intelligent alien life thousands of years ago, but that such contact was recorded and intentionally preserved by ancient cultures using a medium no one would even think to check: stone discs with microscopic writing. But here's where it gets more mysterious. The story of the Dropa Stones was never officially accepted by mainstream archaeology. The stones reportedly vanished after being transferred to museums, and key documents related to their discovery were either lost or dismissed as fabrications. Professor Chebul Tay, The lead archaeologist was reportedly ridiculed and silenced, and his findings buried by academic institutions that couldn't or wouldn't explain them. In the 1960s, a Russian scientist named Dr. Tusum Umnui claimed to have deciphered more of the discs. According to him, the Dropa's story continued. They had been marooned, unable to repair their ship, and had eventually died out or integrated into early human populations. He was met with similar ridicule and eventually disappeared from public records. Now, here's the critical part. No one has seen the Dropa stones in modern times. Their existence relies on a handful of early reports, photographs, and scattered testimonies. Some skeptics claim the entire story was fabricated, a Cold War-era hoax meant to stir intrigue. Others believe the stones were deliberately hidden or destroyed because of what they represented, undeniable proof that Earth was visited by intelligent life long before our current civilization began. But even if the Dropa stones were a hoax, the questions they raise remain valid. Why do we find so many myths across ancient cultures, from the Dogon people in Africa to the Sumerians of Mesopotamia, speaking of gods or beings that came from the sky, taught knowledge, and departed in fire and thunder? And if the Dropa stones were real, what else might be hidden in the remote places of the world? Caves unexplored, languages unread, entire pieces of our past erased from accepted history. Consider this: microscopic engravings, advanced enough to encode complex narratives, embedded into stone thousands of years ago. That's not something you do with primitive tools or by accident. That requires intent, technology, and an understanding of time, of how long a message might need to survive. Was this a desperate warning, a record left behind in case they never made it back? Or could the Dropa still be out there, watching? As with many ancient mysteries, the trail has gone cold. The evidence is missing, the institutions are silent, and the skeptics are louder than ever. But if even one of those discs was real, then our entire understanding of history and of humanity's role in the cosmos could be wrong. The Dropa stones remain a riddle, wrapped in time, hidden in the shadowed corners of the earth, and possibly in the stars.